given by John. John is giving his 10th speech today after he almost didn't join Toastmasters. Now he's almost done. He wants to inspire you to step outside of your comfort zone and try something new. Something you've been wanting to do and thinking about doing, but have hesitated. Please welcome John for his 10th speech titled First and 10.
Des Moines, if you would please give me 6, 8, and 10 on the time. When Bill first announced that he was going to start Toastmasters, I was both excited and filled with a little trepidation. I thought to myself, if I go to Toastmasters and give a speech and I use notes, I thought it might be a stuffy bunch. I thought that they might think that I was unprofessional using notes. They might think that my ideas and my stories were weird or eccentric. And I replied to Bill's email asking a question. Now, I don't remember what the question was, but he said something in his reply that gave me a little nudge. He said, he answered the question, and then he said, "Will you be joining us? I hope that you do." And that was enough of a nudge to get me to come to my first meeting. And when I came to my first meeting, my plan was to slip in the door, stay under the radar, go completely unnoticed, and not get called on, which is how it actually turned out. I stayed quiet, I didn't want to get called on. They started talking about table topics. And I thought, are you nuts? Nobody can get up here and talk with zero preparation. I'll never be able to do that. So, as I said, Bill's "I hope that you do" is enough to push me to do something that I had fear about doing. The first time I saw a program, an allegory, this was when I was a kid. I was 7 years old. I saw an allegory. I didn't realize it was an allegory at the time. An allegory is just a story that usually has a moral or some sort of lesson attached to it. I saw this when I was 7 years old, and it resonated with me. Looking back, I recognized it as an allegory. It was a show called The Electric Company, which some of you have seen, some of you are probably too young. But they would do little skits on stage, probably 3 or 4 people doing a skit with very minimal, it's almost like a play. And they had this one skit where they had 4 people and they were working on an assembly line. And the assembly line would bring up a board and a peg, and it was everybody's job to take the peg and hit it into the board. This would go on, and then a bell would ring, and 3 of the people that had been there grabbed a paper bag, stuck it on their head, and continued working. As you can imagine, they ended up hitting their hands, and it didn't go well. Then the bell would ring again, they'd take off their bags, and they'd all breathe a collective sigh of relief. Well, the 4th guy, he put his bag on too. He was new, but he didn't know to put the bag on. And when that was over, he said to the rest of the group, "Hey, why do you guys put a bag on your head?" They said, "Well, we've always done it that way." Thinks about that for a minute. He goes, "Well, what if we try not putting a bag on our head?" Next time the bell rings, they all agreed. Nobody put a bag on their head, and everything went really well. Now that story resonated with me because I see this even today, and I've carried this with me my entire life. It's not always so obvious as putting a bag on your head, and people aren't always as receptive to trying new ideas, but I carried this with me. And I think if somebody just had gotten up on the stage and said, "Hey, if you see something that doesn't seem right, try something new, or don't just do things because you've always done it that way. Try something new," it wouldn't have resonated, but this really did. That was the first allegory. The first time a story really impacted me, and I was really impressed with the storyteller, was the movie Jaws. If you remember the Quint character, I'm not going to reenact it, we don't have a blackboard, we have a whiteboard, but when Quint first appeared in the film, he took his nails and he dragged them across the blackboard to get everybody's attention. Later in the film, he told a story to the crew on the boat. There was just 3 of them. about his experience on the USS Indianapolis, which was a ship that was torpedoed during World War II. Something like 1,100 men went into the water, about 500 came out. The sharks took them out one by one. And he told this story in such a passionate way, and I was so fixated on it that when the shark in the movie finally hit the boat, I jumped out of my chair, literally. And I realized I was in a movie theater. I was so drawn in by it that I had lost that sort of perspective. The first story that I ever told that was based on an experience that I had after I had learned a couple of tips on how to tell a story, because before this, I didn't really tell stories, I just relayed facts of what happened. But then I learned there are a couple of tricks you can use to incorporate. And that very first story is the story I'm going to tell you now. I'll tell you in advance that I wanted to tell this ever since my third speech. I was hesitant, I was nervous, I was actually warned against it by a couple of people, and you'll understand why when I tell it. About 5 years ago, my sister was coming down to visit and stay with my family. And she is very, very Catholic. She's super Catholic. She goes to church twice a week, every week. I, on the other hand, I don't go to church at all. But she was going to be here on a Sunday, and I thought, I'll take her. And I asked my oldest daughter to join us. We went to the church. Again, my plan, similar to Toastmasters, my first Toastmasters meeting, slip in the back, stay quiet, slip out at the end. Simple plan, what could possibly go wrong? Well, before the service was over, I would find myself standing on the altar with my sister and my daughter and the priest holding the blood of Christ. Let me go back. We came in, we sat down, we thought it would be a good idea to dress up. We wanted to make it a good experience for my sister. So we all got dressed up, and we must have looked to the ushers like a really nice family, which we are. We sat down, I'm looking around, I'm thinking, okay, we got in, we're in a good spot, I feel comfortable, everything's good. What could go wrong? Then I feel the tap on my shoulder. And I thought, uh-oh, busted. They know I'm not supposed to be here. And that might sound strange to you. Why would he think they're going to know that I'm not supposed to be there? When I was a kid, my sister, who I'm with, I was probably about this tall. I would get bored and I'd start to goof around. And she'd say, shh, the priest is going to hear you and he's going to ring the bell. And I would look around and all I could see were tall people everywhere. I couldn't see the priest. I'm like, there's no way he could see me, so I continued goofing around. Next thing you know, he rings the bell. Now, if you're not Catholic, you might not know that that's part of the ceremony. But when I heard the bell, I was like, whoa. So that feeling, every time I go into a church, it's never really quite left me. So I turn around, and the usher says to me, would you like to be the gift family? I didn't know what a gift family was. So I slowly turn to my sister, and she turns and looks at him and says, oh, we'd love to. Well, what's this about? He says, great, I'll be back in about 20 minutes to collect you and get you ready. So I'm sitting there dreading this. Like I said, I wanted it to be a good experience for my sister, and I didn't want to screw it up. I didn't know what to do. He brings us to the back of the room, to a back room at the beginning of the aisle, and he says, I want you to take the gifts, which were blood of Christ, body of Christ, and incense and myrrh, that type of thing. And then I want you to walk up to the front of to the altar, and then the priest at that time will either invite you up or he'll come down to collect the gifts. So my thought was, okay, we're going to walk really slowly so that there's no confusion when we get there. He'll be at the front of the altar already. But this particular priest happened to be about 90 years old, I'm guessing. And I don't know how many of you remember, I know you probably do, Paul, the Tim Conway character on the Carol Burnett show that played the old man, and he walked like this. Right? That's what this priest did. So we got there about the same time. And he put his arms out like this as he was talking. And then I'm waiting, what do I do? He does this. He says, come on up. So each went up, and we gave gifts, and it went really well. We go back to the seat. It was a very long, awkward walk back to our pews. And I'm looking at my sister periodically throughout the service, and she's got this big smile on her face. I'm thinking, well, I guess that went okay. She had a good experience, and that was really our goal. When we're walking out, it occurred to me why. I said, you saw that as a sign, didn't you? She said, yeah. I thought, well, great. I couldn't ask for more. That was really a great experience for everybody. So that's the story I wanted to tell. And I want to share something with everybody here. As I mentioned at the beginning, it was that push from Bill that got me going. And whenever you have something that you want to try, something new, whether you want to learn it or something you want to experience, I encourage you to try it. So I'm giving everybody, I'm going to pass these around, I'm going to keep a copy so that I can tell you what it is. It's your very own personal, I hope that you do. And anytime you need that encouragement, you pull this out of your pocket and you use that, I hope that you do. The other thing I included is around to it, because a lot of people say, I'll do that one day when I get around to it. Now you get around to it. You've got no excuses. Go out there and do those things you want to do.